Hi, and welcome to the session on scaling Agile with SpiraPlan, with a focus on SAFe and Nexus methodologies, or Scaled Agile Framework. My name is Adam Sandman from Inflectra, and I'll be presenting today in this session. And the objectives are to look at some of the different ways you can scale your Agile projects, both using the programs and the portfolios feature of SpiraPlan. This session is really geared towards people using SpiraPlan. So if you are using SpiraTest or SpiraTeam, it may be worth looking at this session to see if you can get some of the benefits from upgrading to SpiraPlan. We're going to look at a few different approaches, including both SAFe, or the Scaled Agile Framework, and that has several flavors that we'll look at, as well as the Nexus model of Scrum, which is another common model for scaling Agile projects. There's also another model called the Scrum of Scrums that we'll also touch on as well. And we'll demonstrate how you can implement these different methods in SpiraPlan. Firstly, let's talk about scaling Agile in general. What is scaling Agile, and why do we scale Agile, and what does all that mean? So Agile was really designed back in the late 90s, early 2000s to help teams deliver work in a more consistent way and avoid massive amounts of rework that then threw projects off of their schedule. The idea was, let's assume that change is going to happen and design for that change, rather than waterfall, where we try to engineer out change, which failed because change is inevitable. As soon as someone sees a system, they want changes, they see how it can work. Inevitably, your requirements are never going to be exactly right. And so Agile was an idea that if we can strip away some of the process and the overhead and have the users talk directly to the programmers and the testers, and they can all work together on a single team, we can build a project that's just exactly what they need with real-time feedback. And that's fantastic. The problem is, it was designed for a 10, 12 person team, mostly working together in the same physical location. Although now, of course, with the advances in remote working, it could be a distributed team, but it's still a single team working on a single product with a single set of stakeholders. That really is the concept of Agile. Agile is, we're going to build a product for my stakeholders with one team, and we're going to work very intensely together to deliver that. And if that's what you're doing, then I think you should stop this presentation, go to a different session, because scaling Agile is not for you. It's just going to be an unnecessary overhead, and you don't need it. So if Scrum is working for you, Kanban is working for you, whatever flavor of Agile you put together is working for your team, that's great. Now the problem is, let's say you want to have more teams work together. You've got lots of individual products that are doing Agile, but now they have to work together because there's some common objective that you need to work on. Or you're integrating your tools together in a way that requires that the systems have to actually collaborate together and not just be developed separately. Scale Agile is really good when you are working on these kind of large programs, or in a very large organization where you have to be able to see what's going on across all your Agile teams. That's what Scaled Agile is for. It's scaling the approach of Agile for a larger program or organization, but still not destroying the value of Agile, which is the flexibility and the lack of micromanagement that you tend to get with more traditional project management methodologies. And if people start to introduce micromanagement, then you're not really scaling Agile. You're just throwing Agile out the window. Okay, so let's talk about the scaling of Agile from an evolution standpoint. This is our sort of classic Agile team. You've got your customer, who is the person who can give you the feedback on your user stories, can write your user stories with you. The one-throated choke can say, this is what the system's meant to do. When they see the system, they can say, I like this, I don't like that. The product owner is the person from the team's perspective who is responsible for interacting with the customer and acting as the gatekeeper to work with the customer. The Scrum Master works in keeping the team happy and the team moving and all the process happening. So the product owner works with the client. The Scrum Master focuses more on the team side. And the product owner and the Scrum Master are essentially the leadership of the team. The team itself consists of a multidisciplinary set of people: developers, DBAs, testers, UI, business analysts. Depending on the type of system, you may have a different composition ratio, maybe more of one. Maybe you don't have a dedicated DBA. Maybe you do. Maybe you have a UI person. Maybe you have more than one UI person. Maybe it's all UI people if it's a very marketing-based product. That's fine. Whatever the composition that makes sense, that's your classic Agile team. It's all interdisciplinary and it's all working as one team. There's no separate QA team that's completely divorced. Okay, now we have to have a team of teams. So we've got a large product. This large product is a system of systems. It contains more than one module and the separate teams working on it. And that's where you might want to have different teams and something called a program manager who's responsible for keeping an eye on these teams and coordinating everything. From team of teams, you now may have a situation where you go towards a system where you have many different products. And the difference between typically a portfolio and a program is this. A program consists of products that are really part of one big system, whereas a portfolio is a collection of systems that really have different business needs, but they're managed together because there might be the fact that they accomplish value for an organization. So for example, if I've got an online banking system, maybe the program is the online banking system, and one of the products is the mobile banking, one of the other products is the web banking for the website version. And maybe there's phone banking. So those would all be products, but it's one set of users, it's one set of requirements, it's one integrated set of systems that has to work together. You can't release one without the other, they all have to go together. That's a program. Portfolio might be all of the consumer banking functions, features, and systems. So those systems are different. The systems that are being used in one, the tellers versus in the bank versus on the website, they're not connected systems. They are connected in a sense, but they're not released at the same time. The requirements are different. There's a set of people in charge of those particular products who's responsible, but it's an organizational dependency. The systems themselves, I can release the products for the banks versus the online website versus the mobile. They can be released at different times. The requirements are different. The stakeholders are different. But I'm in charge of all of them, so I need to be able to see what's on track, what's behind, and maybe the online banking is more important right now because of a change in the world environment, and I want to spend more time on that and resource that more and delay the release of the other products. So portfolio management is more around managing the risk and the value between the different products, whereas a program is more around managing the whole thing as a single entity. The dependencies between them are much more important. So a program manager is really much more hands-on in terms of the systems, dependencies, and the plan. A portfolio manager is looking more at the value, the risk, the return on investment of each of the products. It's more investment-based. Where do I spend the money? Whereas a program manager is much more around what's on track. And of course, when you roll up to a whole company, all of your products and all of your portfolios of products all fit together to give you the enterprise, which is driven at the top by, we've got a company strategy and objectives. We have underneath, we have the infrastructure, the culture of our company, the DevOps pipelines that we have, can we release every day? Are we releasing every month? What can our infrastructure support? Because you have all your strategy and objectives, which is great, but you have to have an infrastructure to support that. And then in the middle is all the products and programs and portfolios that have to basically deliver the value supported by the infrastructure. And then the last piece now, if you look at the way where the world is moving, is that so many companies are integrated with each other that your Agile team that forms part of your program, that forms part of your portfolio of different products, that's part of your company's strategy, might be delivering functionality that's used by other companies. And so if I produce a product that's released and then another company takes my product and then uses it with their product, then the supply chain doesn't even end within my enterprise. It spans multiple enterprises. For example, many banks have online banking, but actually they don't really. Many banks don't build their own online banking. So the big banks do, but some of the smaller community banks, they actually have a white labeled service like Yodlee, where you can see your online bank accounts, and the back end belongs to that bank because it's their own bank accounts. But all of the web front end is a standardized third-party commercial solution that provides this web front end to all these different types of banks. So if you're working for a small community bank, you just simply provide them the data and they do all the display of it. So the company that makes that product, their feature, their online banking tool is actually being used and is supporting the strategy of 100 other different banks. And if they change a feature in one user story, in one product, in one program, they could potentially affect 100 other companies. And if that feature that they promised is late, that means that 100 banks with their own separate sets of strategies and regulators and clients and executives, they're all impacted. So that bank probably wants to know not only what's going on in all the systems that they develop, but all of the components and third parties that they work with. They really want to have visibility into what's going on in those other organizations that they're dependent upon. So the scaling of Agile is really not just a single company affair. As we move into the future and interconnections of software, think of it more as a supply chain, like a supply chain of value of software. A programmer writing code in one company might be a small cog in a giant supply chain of software. And when it works really well, it's amazing how that value can be distributed really quickly around the world. If things are late or break, it's amazing how quickly you can cause damage. So scaling Agile is really not just a single company affair. When we talk about scaling Agile, we're also talking about scaling it across multiple organizations, some of whom might be competitors of each other too, because you might have one bank that's a competitor of another bank, but they both use the same third-party product. Or one bank may have multiple different products it uses for different kinds of banking product, different websites. And so the companies it's using to provide that service, they might be competitors. So it's a very complex web of competitors, partners, interrelationships. Your partner might be your competitor, or part of your partner might be a competitor. It's very strange. So anyway, the key is the supply chain of value and software is more and more resembles the supply chains you see in the physical world. So that's the challenge. How do we support scaling for Agile from that one team approach where it was designed into this incredibly complex web of systems and products and companies and portfolios? Also, you've got people like regulators, data privacy authorities that are breathing down your neck. If something goes wrong and there's a data breach or a functionality doesn't work, if it's a bank, you don't have to just answer to your board of directors. You might be answering to the government as well, which is not a good thing. So how do we scale Agile? Well, there's different models of scaling Agile. One of the simplest models that's quite popular is called the Nexus model of Scrum. And Scrum, as we mentioned before, it's an Agile methodology built for a single team. So the Nexus model of Scrum is simply a way of taking that approach and scaling it up. So in Nexus, you have your product backlog, you have your sprint planning with your Scrum teams, and then you have your Nexus sprint backlog. And what you're doing is the product backlog is for multiple teams. And so instead of having a backlog, one for each team, that's completely independent, you now have a combined product backlog for the entire set of different teams, and the teams work together to refine it. Each of the Scrum teams themselves will take that overall groomed backlog and take the most important items that belong to their set of functionality, and that forms your sprint backlog for all the different sprints that are in that nexus, that group of related teams and products. And now all the teams are working together, and the work they're doing is all integrated. So Nexus is really geared towards a program concept where you're working on one large system of systems. It's not like a portfolio where they're all separate. And so the teams work doing their integrated development, and there's different Scrum teams work as normal. But then the big difference is there's now this Nexus integration team. And so as well as having the daily Scrums on each of the teams, there's also a Nexus daily Scrums. So each team has its own daily Scrums, and then representatives from those teams will be on the Nexus, the team inter-team daily Scrum as well. And at the end of each major set of sprints, you have a release review, and then you release an integrated increment. So the whole Nexus team of teams is working on one system, probably one set of development servers, build servers, one integration environment, and that's then being released as a single product to the end users. So Nexus is really good when you have a large-scale program with many different teams, but you're working on one large interconnected code base or set of code bases. And when you do your retrospective at the end, as well as doing the individual teams may have their own retrospectives, you're also going to have a Nexus-wide sprint retrospective. So basically, Nexus is a way of taking team of teams and having this Nexus, hence the name, where you all come together. So you have an integrated backlog, you have an integrated set of retrospectives, and then you have both daily Scrum meetings for the individual teams. You have the daily Scrum for the overall Nexus as itself, and you have a separate Nexus integration team. Those are some of the key attributes. So one of the key pieces that makes Nexus distinct from other methodologies is this Nexus integration team. And that consists of the product owner, the Scrum Master, and if you want, members of the other teams. So at the very least, each Scrum team will contribute their product owner and Scrum Master. Now, they may also have other members join, and that might be because maybe they're going to talk about something at that meeting, which is to do with the database. Maybe they're doing a database integration meeting. Maybe they also in the DBAs. Maybe it's very much focused on the UI. So therefore, you want to have the UI representatives, the usability people. So that's up to you. But the key is every single Nexus integration meeting, should have your product owner and the Scrum Master. Now, if you're going to use SpiraPlan for a Nexus type engagement, what we'd recommend is using SpiraPlan. And then inside of Spira, you can have multiple releases in each of the products. So if you're managing this large engagement, you can use the hierarchical release system we have in Spira. So you can have one product and use a large number of different releases in a tree structure, or you could use different products in Spira for each of the different teams, and you can then use the program in Spira to be the Nexus integration team. So there's two ways of doing it. It's up to you. So again, if you have the different teams be a different product, then you can use the program planning board and the program views to be able to see what's going on at an integration level for the Nexus. Otherwise, you can use the individual product. The individual products could be the entire Nexus, and you can use the release view. And so those are the two options written out. First of all, one option is you have the entire product is basically a program, and every single team is mirrored as a SpiraPlan product. Then you will have each of the product backlogs will be in our product backlog, and the sprints will be the sprints. And you use the program dashboard to get the integration-wide integration team Nexus in the Nexus view. The other option you can do is you can do everything in one SpiraPlan product, and then you just use the releases and the release tree to segment your teams. And then your product backlog, your sprints will be in the single product. And now you will use the product dashboard, not the program dashboard. Now, why would you use one versus the other? There's some pros and cons. If the requirements are going to be, and test cases will be shared, then using a single SpiraPlan product is better. If each of the teams will have different members on them and there's permissions and security going around that, you don't want them to see each other's work, there's some privacy issues or security issues, then using the program option with different products will work. So really it's up to you. The next approach to scaling Scrum or Agile in general, but Scrum in particular, is called the Scrum of Scrums or SOS. Scrum of Scrums is quite similar to Nexus. You have different teams. You have each of the teams, and then you have this Scrum of Scrums team. The one difference between this and Nexus is that in Nexus, you had a single integration team and then a bunch of separate teams. In Scrum of Scrums, it's more of a hierarchy. You have, say, 2 or 3 Scrum teams that they report to a Scrum of Scrums, and then you have a Scrum of Scrums. And so whereas Nexus would have had potentially up to 10 teams with one integration team, with Scrum of Scrums, it's more of a tree structure where you have at most 3 to 4 Scrum teams in this Scrum of Scrums. So it's more distributed evenly. And depending on the cadence of your Scrums, you can have different Scrum. You can have a daily Scrum for each team, and then you can participate in the Scrum of Scrums with Ambassador model. That's very similar to Nexus. So in Nexus, you had the product owner and the Scrum Master and on that integration team meeting. Here it's very similar, except in Scrum of Scrums, they recommend you have a single person go as the ambassador, but I guess you could have more than one. So you could do the same thing, have both the product owner and the Scrum Master, or it could be rotating. And so, as you can see here, it could be a technical person if it's like a very technical meeting, or it could be the Scrum Master or product owner, and they participate in the higher level meeting. And then the same thing, the Scrum of Scrums would designate their ambassador to go to the Scrum of Scrums meeting. Like we saw with the Nexus approach, there's different ways you can model it within a SpiraPlan. You could have a program approach or a product approach. You can manage the entire hierarchy of all the Scrum of Scrums in a single SpiraPlan product using our release hierarchy. You can have release with sub-release, with sub-release, with sub-release, with sprints. Sprints would be the teams, sub-release would be the Scrum of Scrums. The release above that would be the Scrum of Scrums. So you can use the release structure to do that. Or you could use a program approach where you have the top level. In this case, it's the Scrum of Scrums. This top level is the program. This is the product. These are the releases. So you can use a combination of products and releases, or you could do it where this top level is the product, and then each of these is releases, and these are sub-releases. And we have both major and minor releases in SpiraPlan that makes this very doable. So here's an example where you could have a release structure where the top level could be the Scrum of Scrums, the next tier down will be the Scrum of Scrums, and the lower level, the sprints, will be the Scrum teams. Or you could have it where the program forms the top level. And graphically, that's what it looks like here. In this example, we have 3 levels. The Scrum of Scrums is the program, the Scrum of Scrums is the product, the Scrum is the release, and the sprint is the sprint. So the other option, as I said, is you could have the Scrum of Scrums is the product, the Scrum of Scrums is the major release, the Scrum is the minor release, and the sprint is the sprint. And the same reasons for pros and cons as the same as before. If the team is all the same, if all those teams can see each other's work and there's no permission issues and the requirements and test cases and tasks are highly interconnected, a single product is going to be easier. If there are different team members in each and they shouldn't see visibility into each other's work and the requirements are more separate, the test cases are more separate, then using a single product for each Scrum of Scrums is probably better. And you can use a hybrid of these two as well. And lastly, we're going to move on to the Scaled Agile Framework, or SAFe, which is actually in some ways the most popular and largest of the scaled Agile approaches. There are 4 different flavors of SAFe: Essential SAFe, Large Solution, Portfolio, and Full. Going into this is probably beyond the talk of this presentation, but generally speaking, Essential SAFe is the simplest and the most basic. It's basically if you're managing a program and you've got teams in your program. In that sense, it's very similar to Nexus. You've got a program, integrated program, and you've got a set of teams. So Essential SAFe can be thought of as being very similar to Nexus. Large Solution SAFe is when you have multiple programs, but you're actually building out a very large integrated set of products and solutions that really work together. So basically, you've got multiple programs that form part of a giant solution. Portfolio SAFe is where you have lots of different programs in your organization. They're separate from each other, but they do have to compete for money, for time, and resources. And so you're using a portfolio approach where you want to balance the investment, the time, but the programs in that portfolio, for the most part, are independent of each other from a requirement standpoint, dependencies. They can be managed separately. It's more that you're investing in them and understanding how, if you invest more in this one, you have to, that always has an impact on the other one because resources are finite. So it's a resource-driven approach, whereas Large Solution is much more schedule and value-driven. And then Full SAFe, it combines all of this into one big methodology where you can have a portfolio that contains lots of large solutions. And so Full SAFe is if you're running a very, very large enterprise and you're in charge of managing every IT system in the entire company, and you manage it at a portfolio level, but inside your portfolio, there are lots and lots of large solutions that are being managed as a single set of programs that then contain lots of products and systems. So Full SAFe is effectively a company-wide implementation of Agile, and really for very large companies at that. So in terms of Essential SAFe, this is the diagram of what's in SAFe. The key piece with SAFe is going to be that you have product delivery and a program backlog, which then drives your team backlogs. So here's your program backlog, and that focuses on what's called a release train, which is a continuous delivery pipeline. And that release train is delivering value on frequent increments. So each of the different teams is working on different sprints, and they're releasing functionality continuously in what's called this release train. And that's essentially a solution level view. Then you have Large Solution SAFe, which takes that one level further and has a large solution set of releases. And now you're talking about having basically a backlog at the solution level. So you're talking about a backlog of features and value and what they call value streams, which are basically large features and large pieces of business value that you want to deliver across many different systems. So it's basically taking the Agile approach where you have a backlog of features and you're scaling it up to a backlog of basically value that you're going to be delivering across this entire solution. And they're often called capabilities or enablers. And then a capability is like a feature, but it's a feature across many systems. So for example, a feature in a single system might be being able to do your banking online. A capability might be customers can access their bank accounts through any medium. That's the capability, of which online banking, mobile banking, those features give you that capability. An enabler is more like what we'd call traditionally a non-functional requirement. So an enabler might be, internet accessibility allows you to have online banking, and so having large networking capabilities, the ability to have secure access into the network is a prerequisite for building this functionality. That's an example of an enabler, basically the non-functionals. Portfolio SAFe is a little bit different. It's more driven by basically the vision of the company, the strategic themes. That's like we as a company, these are our top 3 goals. And if you look at these goals, these particular features, these epics, these features will enable those goals. Well, which goal is more important? If this goal gives us more money and it's got more ROI than that other goal, that would drive the prioritization of the work. So a portfolio approach is more driven on the value, the investment, and it lets a lot more of the coordination and the delivery up to the individual products because it's managing a portfolio, not a single program, not a single large solution. And then full safe, as I mentioned, that's all four together. That's where you basically have our company has this vision, these themes. That's what's really important to us. Everything drills down from that. From those themes and our vision of what the company needs to be, we know what our key investment goals will be. In Q1, we want to be able to have this functionality, these features that our clients are going to need. That drives in each of the solutions, the capabilities. In each solution, that's going to drive, when you go down to the individual products and programs, what user stories we do. And it's very much taking a value for the company. We want to be number one in online banking, and then drilling that down so that someone's got like build a login page user story. I mean, it's taking that thread all the way down. So the idea there is if you make a decision as a company that this strategic theme, for example, being number one in online banking is no longer as important to us, we instead want to do something completely different. Maybe we want to be number one in community banking. Well, that changes our entire outlook on the future. It changes our investment, changes our prioritization. All the teams need to be reorganized, and potentially different features will come out first. So the idea is that it lets you manage the business from a value standpoint, and all of the technology and all the enablers being developed and integrated to support that will adjust, in theory anyway. So where are we with SpiraPlan? So if you have SpiraPlan, and what we have today is we can give you full support for Essential Safe. So SpiraPlan today, with our artifacts, with our requirements and our hierarchies, with our program view, our portfolio view, and our enterprise view that we've added in version 6.6, we can give you full compliance with Essential Safe. So each release train is managed as a specific SpiraPlan product, and that's long-lived. So products in Spira are long-lived. They used to be called projects. We changed the name for that very reason. So in SpiraPlan, each of your Agile release trains will be essentially a SpiraPlan product. And then each of the Agile teams has their own schedule, and the backlogs and the releases are built off of that product. So if you look at the program view, it looks something like this. These are different releases. In that product, the product rolls up to the program. And that's the mapping right here. So for Essential Safe, your Agile release train is your SpiraPlan product. Your product backlog is your product backlog. Your epic is your parent requirement. Your feature and your enabler are your requirement. One is a feature, one is an enabler. You can either just use the names from the safe by changing the artifact type, the requirement types, or if you want to call them different things, that's fine. But basically, as far as we're concerned, features and enablers are just different types of requirement. The team is effectively the release. The team backlog is the release backlog. The sprint is the iteration, and the stories can either be a story, or the enabler story could be an enabler. It's really up to you. But typically, what you'll do is the tasks can be configured as your user stories, and then your non-functional will be a different type of task. And then your acceptance test, unit test, and component test, as defined by safe, are just different types of test case. So this is a good layout. This layout maps safe, Essential Safe, directly onto SpiraPlan. And again, feel free to use this when you're designing your safe implementation. For the other three flavors of safe, SpiraPlan does provide you with a portfolio and a program solution level view, as they call it in safe, and that can be used to manage the value streams, the solution trains, and a seamless hierarchy. We have, since version 6.6, this enterprise dashboard view. So you can look at that top level view all the way down, and you can manage the schedule, you can manage the completion percentage. You can see all the features and enablers, and they roll up from the releases up to the products, up to the programs, up to the portfolios, up to the top level view. In addition to that, you've also got the ability to see the risks and the issues risen from the products up to the program, up to the enterprise view as well. So risk management is included, which isn't even in safe, but that's actually a huge part of the value we believe SpiraPlan brings. Now, there are some things right now that we don't have for the other three levels of safe. So enterprise view gives you that top-down view of the completion. What we're missing for right now in SpiraPlan that we're going to be adding next year will be support for strategic themes and goals, the program milestones and value streams, and then having program level requirements for the program level capabilities, enablers, and increments. So right now we track it all at the product level and we roll it up to the program and to the portfolio. What we'll be doing in next year is adding that native support in the program level for program level enablers, capabilities, and increments. And the same thing, we'll have program level milestones and value streams. So that way you'll be able to have a full implementation of safe, full safe with SpiraPlan. So just to wrap up, as we mentioned, Agile was designed for a single team working together, building a single product with a stakeholder that's largely on site or nearby. There are many different ways you can scale Agile. There's lots of different ways. Choose what's right for you. Don't just simply say, I want to do full safe because that's what I've read online. Look at the different approaches. See what's going to give you the best value with the least overhead. Choose the simplest approach that works, which is the Agile philosophy right there. And if you are using different tools, if you are using Spira Test and Spira Team, look at using SpiraPlan. It's an upgrade from Test and Team. It gives you the portfolio view. It gives you the program view, the large solution view. It gives you the enterprise view. And then next year, as we roll out the value streams and the enablers and the features at the solution/program level, you will be ready, all set to take on both portfolio, large solution, and full safe. And today, using SpiraPlan, you can do Nexus, Scrum of Scrums, and Essential Safe. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, please use the chat widget in the conference.